Shout out to Legion of Men for pulling this video forward from the United Kingdom. The Scottish gal named Kate is talking about what's going on in the UK. I have seen quite a few news reports and people discussing. My understanding is Europe and England have been getting just totally shredded by the continued war with Russia and Ukraine. And the reason for that is Russia supplies the energy, the gas to Europe. And so there's this constant, upping everyone is cutting off Russia from the world, but they need they need their energy. So Russia is just charging an insane amount of money for the energy. And so everyone, I mean, imagine having like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 heating bill here in the US. And then that causes inflation across the rest of the economy. So, lots of videos and people talking about how they don't have enough money to eat, they can't pay their bills, they're working every job they possibly can. So not a good time the last few years, and not something that's really ever talked about with the war, side effect of this ever going war between Ukraine and Russia. And then also, she's going to talk about just the low pay rate. And I think this is a worldwide or a Western problem. I just saw a statistic this week that the starting wage for a fast food job or a minimum wage job, the average, and I think it was like 20, it was $21 or something like that. And the starting wage for a college degree is now, I think it's $23. So they're only a few dollars apart. So they're probably going to hit the same level here soon. So yeah, the whole system seems to be in not a good place.
Hello, my name is Kate, and I am 29 years old. I am Scottish, three-quarter Scottish, a quarter Irish, but I spent my whole life in Scotland and consider myself Scottish. However, since June of this year, 2024, I haven't lived in Scotland or any part of the UK. Firstly, I lived in Greenland for 4 months, which is very random, but I had a really cool job opportunity there. And then that was basically a fun folly, with afterwards the plan being to move to Hong Kong to teach English, which is where I've been for the past 2 months. And this is now my home. I'm not saying forever, but definitely for at least a year.
And props if I didn't already say, Manosphere is pulling forward a lot of the channel. Manosphere is pulling forward a lot of these videos that are obscure to try to get people an idea of what is going on in the world and people's struggles.
And I want to talk to you a little bit about why I feel that way. So, small amount of context. This channel that I'm posting this on, it's got like 100 subscribers, so it's completely irrelevant. However, what I want it to be is a channel where I interview people. I interview people because I really enjoy that. I love talking to new people. I love learning new experiences. But why I'm kind of breaking the mold today and just talking to the camera is because the last person I interviewed was a guy called Daryl Solis. And Daryl, apologies, I've not talked to my GoPro before. And Daryl did a viral video about leaving the UK and why he chose to do that. And as I was having that conversation with him and reflecting on it afterwards, I realised there was so much more that I wanted to say as someone myself in a position who's chose to leave the UK. So let me tell you why I chose to leave the UK, why I feel better already for it, and why I would, with a heavy heart, and I mean that seriously, I do love my country a lot, but with a heavy heart, I would genuinely recommend that if you're watching this as a young person in the UK, you consider moving. So the first reason is that you you you're genuinely paid shit. Like,
I was just thinking that the only reason you would stay in America is to make money. I was just
money literally to survive. So the money you're making isn't to have fun with. It's literally to get you through the month so that you can work for the next month. We live in a country where if you try to better yourself by going to university, the interest you pay on your education means that it's basically guaranteed that for the rest of your working life, you're 10%, 9%. So 10% of that is going to be taken away from your salary. And if you're someone who isn't making that much to begin with, or did a degree that's completely vital for the economy, you might resent that for the rest of your life, 9% of your education but is taken away because of your education. Your choice to better yourself costs you so much money. And if you're like me, then you will have graduated but never had a graduate job. So you'll be paying 9% just for the experience, which quite frankly is bollocks because, you know, for me personally, half of my experience of university was during COVID, so the experience wasn't there. But also just in terms of how I feel as someone with, you know, an okay amount of intelligence, I don't attribute much of what I've learned in life to my university experience at all. It's just not worth it. It's very frustrating.
And it would be worth it, even the cost, everything she's saying, if she had a job that matched her graduate level education, but she doesn't. You see, and that's the same problem we have in America, except worse because our tuition costs are way worse. So you graduate with the entire mortgage on your back that you can't discharge. Don't know what the rules are in the UK for that, but I know America has one of the worst post-secondary education systems in the world in terms of finances. And
Another point, just today on April 9th, the federal government paused the $9 billion going to Harvard, and Harvard is worth more than like 100 in some countries. It's basically worth more than the bottom third of countries on the planet. They don't need anybody's money, and they obviously have produced some of the most destructive, whatever you call it, DEI, controversial, just toxic professors and people recently. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I mean, the education system is completely broken.
the financial impact it has on an individual. So imagine you go to school all these years, you get a doctorate, PhD in something, and there's no job for you. Hell, there's no job for you even coming out with a bachelor's in a vast majority of the disciplines that people are learning about today, unless you're in some STEM. And even STEM, part of the technology side is being threatened by AI. So all the
I'm still left leaning in principle, in theory, but
theory
it's
not
if your
working.
if you can't see where your taxes are going, it's so stressful. It's so stressful that such a high percentage of your income can be taken away from you when you know what you could do with that to better your life. And in the process of bettering your life, better the lives of the people around you and society. You know, if you could get a house and if you could, you know, invest in some skill sets, blah, 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 with that money, that would be good for the economy. That would be good for your community. But instead, you throw it down a money hole. That's really what it feels like. I had poor mental health a few years ago, and I was told it was a priority that I get therapy. And I was put on a waiting list for therapy. And 15 months later, I got a call to start therapy. And by then, I had to decline it because my address had changed. So the area that I was entitled to it for, I was no longer in. And
Wow.
I was considered critical. I was the priority, and it took 15 months. Now, I got to sort myself out in that case. So, but so many people don't. Some people literally die. a very clear-cut situation where she's someone who completely needs support and will never, you know, will never get a house based on, you know, of the money she's saved or anything. She's entitled to supported living accommodation, and she got on the waiting list this year.
Wow.
And in Dumfries and Galloway, it could be 5 to 10 years before she gets
Benefits.
supported living accommodation. So in 10 years' time, theoretically, could be when she moves out of mum's.
You hear, like, just question it, man. It takes her 10 years to get off the waiting list and get support for being low income. Yet a migrant can get housing and food immediately. Does no one think, like, what's going on here? What are the priorities? Why is this happening? Why are our borders so open? Why are they so against the citizens, the ones that are paying taxes?
Picked up on this. I had to work in Germany a number of times, and they were very vocal about this. It's obviously a American thing and a European thing of bringing in migrants and just giving them more than the citizens. Is it purposeful to cause division? I don't know.
Why are they enforcing laws that are punishing people for simply asking questions? Is this the system you want to live in? Is this a form of tyranny? I don't know what you want to, whatever you want to call this system, democracy, capitalism, all that bullshit. It's not in your best interest as the average citizen.
And you guys can search Google, search YouTube. There are, I know Germany for sure, and England, they are arresting people on the weekend. Surprise, surprise. You posted something on X or on whatever social media that is on the laundry list of no more free speech, and you're getting arrested. Just totally insane. And we lucked out here. We dodged a bullet in the US, but we got really close to that. And now there's still people screaming about that on the left, that we need to have no freedom of speech. We need to have things we can't talk about. That's insane.
Never was. Look at what happened to people in Hawaii when they lost their homes. Nothing. Look at the people in, what was it, Michigan? Nothing. The Ohio, right? Was it I forgot what town that was where that train exploded with all the chemicals. What happened to them? Did they get reimbursed for anything? Nothing.
Dependent. You know, and by then, my mum will be in her late 60s and will have looked after my sister for, 38 years. Obviously, you should be such a primary part of caring for your loved ones when they're sick or disabled. That's how it's always worked. But the idea that there's basically no chance of support, and the idea that, you know, unless you're mega rich, you just have to accept that situation. It's such a disservice to my sister. It's a disservice to my mother, who has paid taxes her entire life, who's always contributed so much to this economy. Now that it's time for her to get something back, she's not going to, or, you know, at least not for basically ever. And also, when I think about the fact that my sister's very well cared for by my mum is someone who enjoys caring for my sister and, you know, can basically do it. When I consider that that's the best case scenario, but out there in Scotland, there are so many far more compromising situations where they will also be told it'll take 10 years. And, you know, lives are falling apart in those situations.
Guys, this is the slow creep towards socialism, where everybody has to wait so long that the problem isn't relevant anymore. That is what socialism looks like. And whatever you want to call it, socialism, communism, whatever, when you have people taking resources and deciding who gets it instead of letting the capital markets and capitalism determine the most efficient path of the money and the fastest turnover of money, you have these bureaucratic governments, bureaucratic businesses, bureaucratic nonprofits, bureaucratic non-government agencies that dole out the power, and you're basically making hundreds or thousands of mini kings, mini whatever you want to call it, oligarchs, and everyone else is left to, be in this existence where you work for nothing and you wait in line for everything.
And I'm sorry to be blunt, you have to literally have a suicide attempt or something crazy before you're urgent enough that they can really prioritize you. And then what does it mean that, even when that happens, does it mean that you get to make a full recovery and you're really looked after, and a thorough investigation into your mental health is done from a holistic perspective as well as a medical one? Very unlikely. And if that's true for mental health, it would be true for physical health as well. I think because of these riots that happened this summer, it's just obvious that people are very unhappy. Now, depending on where you sit politically, you might feel that unhappiness is legitimately because of immigration. Or you might feel that that's misplaced anger and that it's actually about other things, or you might feel it's a bit of both. But either way, people in the UK are livid. They're so angry because we were brought up being told we lived in one of the best countries in the world. That you were so lucky compared to other places. Now, of course, that's true. But if every month you're working just to get through that month and you are living in a place that isn't that nice, that's taking all your money in rent to pay for some, rich person's 7th holiday this year.
Tells you question everything and you look for the weaknesses so you can rebuild your country stronger. Nobody's we're blindly supposed to accept that we're the greatest without ever looking internally and going, but what could we improve on? How could you be the best if you never critique yourself?
That mindset we have is really holding us back. It really stops us from feeling that we can complain. Yeah. So what made my mind change a few years ago is that I graduated from a pretty good uni, if I may say so. I applied for a shit ton of graduate jobs and I couldn't find any. And for a while, I was actually okay with that because it's like, well, this is, you're going to spend the whole of your life in a good job. So if you have 2 or 3 years where you don't, and you're doing waitressing, which is fun, but not making you a lot of money, and that's cool. You've no responsibilities right now anyway. Anyway, years and years went by where I was always applying and doing this minimum wage job waitressing, which I did enjoy it, but there's no money in it, there's no respect, and eventually it really compromises your CV if it's all you can say you've done. How I managed to be a waitress, so someone on minimum wage, but still not live at home with my parents, was that I was a live-in waitress. So I worked in a hotel that I also lived in staff accommodation in the side of.
Jeez.
And the hotel, it's nothing that dramatic, but it was just one of these hotels where the managers above you make 50p more, but they're dead arsey to you. They think that makes them it, even though they're not necessarily better at the job, they've just been there longer or whatever. And then, the people that own the hotel are quite out of touch. They don't pay you extra at Christmas. They don't, you've worked for them for ages, but they don't know your name, etc., etc. I found that I was becoming quite resentful that I worked there, considering my education, which I understand is very snobby. I'm just being honest about how I was feeling. And I was beginning to feel like I'm behind in life. Then I had to realise your life's not what you want it to be, Kate. Your life doesn't feel that good right now, but you have got it good in comparison to...
Look how far the West has fallen. I've seen enough. You want to see her video, links in the description. You have to, I don't want to even call it coping, but you have to convince yourself that you have it good because you're a PhD doctorate graduate. You're working as a server, waitress, and because simply that you were given accommodation by your slave masters, that you somehow have it good in one of the greatest countries to be born in. This is how far we've fallen.
Yeah, well, thanks to EDU Kate and Legion of Men or Manosphere. Yeah, tough times. Unfortunately, with AI, things are going to get tougher before they get better. I think now through 2027, 2028, it's going to be probably toughest times. We're looking at, in a way, probably some Great Depression type stuff, unless we figure out UBI or whatever, as AI is going to increase the plutocracy and the separation of wealth and the consolidation of wealth to the top 0.001%. What do you guys think?